Things went a bit funny for Arya Stark's character in Game of Thrones, and as I've been doing in some of these other videos, I wanted to drill down into what exactly might have caused some of the problems, because I think just complaining Arya shouldn't have killed the Night King, I think that would be a simplistic argument, and we're not really learning anything from that. I mean, yeah, we're going to discuss the problems with the Night King, obviously, but I think there's more to it than that, and a lot of it comes down to who Arya is as a person, so why don't we just get started? Why not? Give me one good reason. This one will be an overarching, more general kind of problem, I think. One that potentially might have worked in different circumstances, but it basically comes down to how much of Arya's arc they make all about wanting revenge. And there's a good quote I found by accident when looking for interviews David and Dan gave that might explain why they decided Arya should kill the Night King. But I found this about Season 5, Episode 3.
She sees herself as an instrument of revenge in many ways. That sword is the way she's going to exact the revenge. It's the instrument of that revenge.
Which is a really interesting quote. One I don't agree with. Also, David Benioff said in the same clip that Arya has always had a strong sense of self, which I think is difficult to say about someone who's gone under so many fake names ever since her father died. I can see what he means, but obviously revenge is an aspect to her character. Every night she recites the names of all the people she wants to kill. It is there, however, I don't think it's her deepest motivation. Nor is it how she sees her list of people she wants to kill, nor is it what Needle represents to her. Needle is the sword that Jon gave her, made by Mikken from the Forge at Winterfell so that she could train to fight. It is a symbol both of where she comes from and who she's always wanted to be. In the books we even get this quote about it. "It's just a sword," she said, aloud this time, but it wasn't. Needle was Robb and Bran and Rickon, her mother and her father, even Sansa. Needle was Winterfell's grey walls and the laughter of its people. Needle was Jon's smile. He used to mess my hair and call me little sister, she remembered, and suddenly there were tears in her eyes. Other people have discussed this, but I think for Daniel Weiss to say Arya can't just throw Needle into the sea, that she can't do that because she can't let go of her desires for revenge, I feel like that argument simplifies her desires massively. Because much more than revenge, her story has always been about trying to get home, back to Winterfell, or Castle Black, or to the Tullys at Riverrun, or to the Eyrie. It's only after all of those options seem to fail that she goes to Braavos. And let's not rule out justice. Her father stood for justice and preached that he who passes the sentence should swing the sword. All of the people on Arya's list are people she feels would justly deserve execution. She wields Needle the way Ned wielded ice to the chopping block, in a way. This is why she kills Darragh in the books. A deserter from the Night's Watch, she has no real personal desires for revenge against Darragh, but executing a Night's Watch deserter is what her father would have done. It's even how the story first began. Obviously Arya's list is a bit different to Ned Stark's acting of the law, and it's a way to cope, I think, mostly, but it's also partly a lost girl who feels faintly reconnected to her father through these kind of things. This is a child's way of trying to, work through some of that. I don't think I've explained that well. I don't know. Let me know. It's a lot of different things, though. That's why I always find it so fascinating to make the deep character analysis videos I do on these characters. You can watch them if you're interested. Because the motivations are rarely just one note. There's often lots of different, multiple, contradictory feelings. And the problem is, in the show, you lose a lot of those extra layers, and it does basically just become about revenge. I find it a little confusing that at the end of Season 6, she finishes with the Faceless Men and tells Jack and Hagar that she's going home, only for Season 7 to be introduced with Arya at the Twins, not at home, killing all of the Freys before travelling south with the plan to kill Cersei. Revenge, or this idea of justice coming first ahead of, like, I don't know, finding out from anyone that Jon Snow is king in the north, Sansa is there, that she has a home to return to again, the thing she always originally wanted. And even then, when she does go to Winterfell and reconnect with this stuff she always really wanted, that doesn't help her forgo her need for revenge, nor is it even ever really brought up as a conflict when she's back in Winterfell. No growth or failure to grow expressed there, you know, she just kind of mills about, and then suddenly she's continuing her quest again, heading south to kill Cersei once more, only at the very last moment when the Red Keep is crumbling from dragonfire. Only then, with Sandor Clegane telling her to, does she finally turn back. And you just feel, why was this not happening earlier? Why wait to basically the last big moment in the story before addressing the very revenge arc you've built her entire story to be about? Is it weird no one ever talks about the fact she murdered all of the Freys? Is it weird that barely ever comes up at all in the story? Look, don't get me wrong, revenge is an aspect of Arya. I expect we'll see more of it going ahead in the books should they ever be released. And even then, just because there are more sides to her in the books doesn't necessarily make this simplified show version bad. It could still work. There's just a lack of clear trajectory with it. Either you challenge her desire for revenge much sooner in the story so that she can actually find more meaning to her life beyond that this growth can happen organically. And for example, I think the Hound was kind of doing that for her. She wanted to kill him, then she got to know him, then she finally got the chance but couldn't bring herself to do it. That was season 4 telling us maybe there's more to revenge than she first felt. But then the Faceless Men try to teach her to let go of revenge, only she can't, and she then murders all of the Freys. Then realises she could reconnect with her family again, only she leaves once more to kill Cersei before then leaving on a voyage that many believe would be certain death to sail west of Westeros. It's not idiotic or anything, it's just a bit confusing in what it's trying to do. I think part of the problem here being it's kind of beneficial to the plot if she is this angry, vengeful assassin, and also kind of badass for her to do this stuff, you know? That's probably why it takes so very long to address revenge as a part of her character at the very end of the story, because for so much of it, it's been keen on enjoying the badassness of that side to her that it didn't want to let it go until the end. And I've got to admit as well, coming into season 7-8, Cersei being her main, focus for killing. There's Sir Gregor as well, but they make that more the Hound's thing in the story. So all of Arya's revenge focused on Cersei. Has Cersei even ever had a conversation with Arya? Do they know really anything about each other? Obviously Arya has good motivation for wanting to kill Cersei, but it lacks a kind of personal touch that makes for the most satisfying kind of protagonist versus antagonist stuff. You don't necessarily need that. You could work around that with a well-written story, but when it's the culmination of her entire arc in the show, it could do with a bit more weight, a bit more feeling as to what Cersei means to Arya personally, and vice versa. So if one problem is the lack of depth and conflict to her character beyond the desire for revenge and the need to let that go, then I guess one early moment that might have hinted at the problem is actually Harrenhal. Maybe this is a stretch, let me know, but I think we can all understand why the show decides to pair up Arya with Tywin there. Maisie Williams and Charles Dance, they make for some really great scenes with a faint father figure dynamic that is so interesting. But I think it does also come with the downside that it makes Harrenhal feel less awful for Arya. Things look relatively cosy once Tywin names her cupbearer. Not good, but she thrives, and there is a kind of father-daughter dynamic, and the introduction of Jaqen H'ghar, who promises to skillfully murder any free people she names. That feels less essential than it does in the books. In the books, she's traumatised by Harrenhal. She feels constantly under danger of death or beating. She feels like a mouse, and then the appearance of Jaqen H'ghar makes her now feel like the ghost of Harrenhal, who can haunt people there. It's about more than just revenge, it's about surviving and feeling safe and how that kind of power can help you in those sort of ways. Which is still in the show. I'm not saying it's completely missing or that Harrenhal is a walk in the park for her, but those aspects do feel lessened when she appears kind of safe. And without those aspects, I think Jaqen H'ghar appeals to her more singularly as a object of revenge than anything else. I do kind of wonder if writing those scenes, indirectly causing that change and then following through with that now as the story, if that made it easy for David and Anne to lose sight of what else Jaqen H'ghar might have represented to Arya other than revenge. I don't know, that point could be a stretch. Really, I want to discuss the House of Black and White now, because that's where we get the big complications. So let's do that, but first, yes, this. Now.
And you killed them? Anybody?
I swear it.
WorldAnvil.
Unname me.
No.
Please?
WorldAnvil is a really cool thing, and they're still sponsoring me, till death do us part. Listen to me passionately talk about them. WorldAnvil is an online tool for world building, the anviling of worlds, character creation, campaign building, story planning, and even writing, and a load more stuff that can be great for anyone with creative projects or games. I use it for the planning of my novel. My organisation is chaotic, so WorldAnvil really helps. I love the way you can create timelines of events with hyperlinks from those pages to a character bio or some other event or information or whatever. Like, my memory isn't the best for the minor details of stuff I invent, so when I'm reading back information about the history of my novel's world and I think, who is this person? I can only half remember. Or what order did these events happen in? Why did that become a social custom? Whatever. I can very easily click a hyperlink to a different page I wrote and check. The ability to create entire timelines based on your own invented calendars and be able to link everything to it, including changes in the maps for if a city gets destroyed or something like that. That is so damn cool. And there are other tools too. Not all of them are ones I need for my novel personally, but they all still look really handy, and I've always found everything pretty easy to use. If it's your thing, they also have a Discord and they run all sorts of events and community support and stuff, like this summer camp they've been running. It's all really great and I enjoy getting to promote them. So there is a link in the description and there's a pinned comment that entitles you to 51% off. Yep, it's 51 now. All their subscriptions with the code TREE. If you want to try it out first, they have a free version so you can get familiar, you know, take your time, take it out for a nice dinner and see where things lead. Yeah, WorldAnvil. Arya's place was at Winterfell, only Winterfell was gone. When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies but the pack survives. She had no pack though, they'd killed her pack, Sir Ilyn and Sir Merlyn and the Queen. And when she tried to form a new one, all of them ran off. Hot Pie and Gendry and Yoren and Lomi Greenhands, even Harwin, who had been her father's man. Again, I don't want to just be saying this is different to the books, therefore it's worse, because it isn't as simple as that, and like with my theory about Harrenhal, sometimes good changes actually can cause unforeseen disadvantages as well. However, in the books, Arya wants her wolf pack. That's why she tries to stick with Gendry and Hot Pie even when they slow her down and cause danger. She feels terribly alone without her pack, her tribe, her place of belonging. And what's interesting about the Faceless Men, I think, is they paradoxically challenge that and say you can't have a tribe, you have to be no one, you have to let go of everything, whilst at the same time they're also giving her a potential tribe, a place to belong, to be something more, even if that something is no one. Does that make sense? Like, there is something appealing there, even if it's also challenging that at the same time. You get to be a part of our elite and mysterious faceless club. And whilst the situation is obviously different, I can't help thinking about the often vulnerable kids who do get drawn into gangs or into cults looking for the exact same thing, a wolf pack. Everywhere else Arya tried to go turned her away or failed her. Only the Faceless Men seemed to want her, to invite her into their family, provided she forgets about her real one. And that's a really palpable emotional conflict. In the book, she gets teachers from the Kindly Man, as he's called, who offers advice and sometimes jokes with her. She learns Pravosi from the Waif. The Pravosi language sorely lacking in the show, by the way. Like, they gave time for Valyrian and Dothraki, but no Pravosi. And the Waif learns the Common Tongue from Arya in return. It's never major stuff, because the House of Black and White I don't think is ever going to be a fulfilling family for Arya. It's basically a cult. But there is something faintly appealing there. Can I find fulfillment and a pack here? Will I not? Should I leave? Where else could I go? In the show though, I honestly don't know what the appeal is for Arya. Like, she's beaten constantly. No one ever explains anything to her. She doesn't know why she's doing things. Most of it is in total isolation, or it's with the waif just seemingly hating her from the get-go. Then her eyes are taken and she's beaten some more, and whilst Arya slightly loses her temper about things in places, for the most she endures with complete determination, and I just think, why? Why go through all of this? They've barely given her any reasons to buy into this stuff, to feel why being a faceless man is such a noble and worthy pursuit. There is zero appeal to any of this, other than that singular, less emotional and more practical drive of I will learn how to kill people very well. That will be good for my revenge quest. And that's just less meaningful and character driven, you know? It relegates all of Braavos from character-based story into just practical plot of Arya learning to fight well and do over-the-top ninja stuff. 2 seasons of it, where Arya is mostly passive as well. Like, it's difficult to write passive characters well, especially when they're just sweeping floors, not knowing anything, lots of shots of her being kept at a distance from the truth, Arya doing something and Jaqen or the waif just secretly looking on with some enigmatic expression. She's kept so passive, we're kept so in the dark, and I feel like what we lack is both a clearer emotional reason for why Arya wants to endure everything, perhaps the faint appeal of a fake family, perhaps Jaqen actually explaining something about why the faceless men are a good thing. You know, they kinda do, but not with any real weight for us to buy into it, and we also need something more emotional as well to test her determination. Not just hitting her and taking away her eyesight, but something that really pulls at her other emotional desires, which is to return home. The appearance of Merlyn challenges her with ideas of revenge, but it's not until the very end of her time in Braavos, after she's made friends with Lady Crane, the person she was supposed to kill but couldn't do, because Lady Crane's a good person, and now Lady Crane heals her wounds with miraculous power. She offers Arya to come and join their theatre troupe, heading to Pentos next. Maybe they'll even go to Westeros soon. I feel like something like this should have happened a lot earlier. When it does finally happen, Arya's always going to say no, because she now has the simple opportunity to go home anyway. She seems to have amassed a ton of gold to pay a captain with, although again there's also no real catalyst for her to suddenly decide now is the time to go back. It's just more her escaping from the faceless men that she has failed, so that also keeps her quite passive. And that's not to say the conflict either has to be about returning home versus the desires of revenge. It could have been a lot of different things, but we need some conflict that pulls her in 2 directions. So all of these 2 seasons, season 5 and season 6, lack a lot of motivation for her. Arya is so damn determined to stick with the training just because she wants to learn how to kill people on her list. They want her to let go of her personal desire, but then she murders Merlyn, so they take away her eyes as punishment, and when they give them back, she basically leaves the same person she was when she arrives, only now she's a skilled assassin too. That's kind of the weird thing about the House of Black and White, and none of this arc really exactly changes her, it just reduces a lot of her depth. In a way, it's not her old life, her old belongings, Needle, that Arya has to shed when entering the House of Black and White, it's her character depth. Let's talk more about her skills though. So I think we all know they stretched the limits of believability when they made Arya so incredibly good at her particular set of skills. I will say I think Maisie Williams' performance is great. I think you can feel the weight of the trauma Arya has been through, and it leaves her understandably quite cold with this underlying rage, and incredibly precise in her speech and her movements, like she is now some cold killing machine. On the one hand, that is done very well. On the other hand, that's now kind of all we get to her character, because everything else has been stripped away, and B, it's not like anyone really has any thoughts on this. Their sister has clearly been through experiences that have left her in not the best place, and apart from her family finding it slightly weird how Arya is, that's kind of it. I think it becomes hard for the show to pick apart these problems when it is also enjoying the chance to frame her as a badass at the same time. The contradiction makes it difficult to explore both. Although equally, no one's really that bothered by Bran either. Their brother is just seen as a bit weird with some strange magical power, and they don't really have any thoughts about that too. So that's one point. It's very hard to explore the downsides of becoming a killing machine when you're also reveling in, like, killing the Freys as a total triumph. But all that aside, why make her so supercharged? Like, especially when it's not even technically stuff the Faceless Men were good at. They were supposed to be all about patience and perseverance, slowly learning all there is to know about your target and how to dispatch them seamlessly, not like being an amazing fighter who could take on tons of people at once. As a side note, I find it unintentionally hilarious how the waif keeps warning Arya when she tries to murder her, and even does some very Terminator-style dramatic walks, in order to give Arya more time to flee and to make what should be a stealthy killing now very public. I don't know, I just find that funny. But yeah, why make Arya so incredibly skilled? There has to be a reason, otherwise what does any of this training ever achieve? She kills the Freys, sure, but that's kind of wrapping up a plot point in a really quick way. That's not story or character. If they'd given Arya a season-long arc of slowly killing all of the Freys, merging her story a little with that of Lady Stoneheart's, making it an exploration of revenge or grief or something, that would be a reason for her to be so skilled. It at least makes some sense. But beyond that, who does she ever assassinate? She digs a little bit of dirt on Littlefinger for this conflict where you're supposed to think Arya and Sansa will turn on each other, which, by the way, is one of my least favourite plot points from the show because of how manufactured it all is for the twist reveal. Also, adding this in the editing, they try to make this tension between the sisters more palpable by having Arya be weirdly bitter about their old sibling rivalry in a way that almost falls into internalised misogyny.
You always liked nice things. Made you feel better than everyone.
I remember the pretty dress you were wearing. I remember the fancy way you did your hair.
And like, you can do that in a story. It could be interesting, I suppose, but explore it, not just throw it in as a random bit just for the sake of manufacturing tension. Potentially, I guess there could have been an arc of her killing Daenerys. That seems plausible for the books. Maybe Euron Greyjoy if he'd been a better character in the show. That's kind of it for options, unless they like invented new characters and situations that they just weren't willing to take the time in developing so late into the show's run. This seems like such a glaring problem they must have been aware of from as early as season 5, if not sooner. If there's going to be all of this training, either Arya's story needs to have her completely turn away from that stuff to then find something else in her life, or she's got to use it for some satisfying end to do something with it. And it just seems really weird if they hadn't thought of that in advance. Okay, let's not be too critical. They had thought of it. They've stated that they knew years in advance Arya was going to be the one to kill the Night King. That's what the training is for. I believe that statement on the basis of Melisandre's foreshadowing from much earlier.
I see a darkness in you. Eyes staring back at me. Eyes you'll shut forever.
So if she is to kill the Night King, then there needs to be some believable reason she would be so very much in the thick of the fighting. Having her become super skilled makes some kind of sense there. They knew from the book she was going to have a load of training, so we can link those two things, I guess. Plus, Arya was a fan favourite. People already found her kind of badass, so the show lent into that further, just like they made Tyrion nicer to appeal to the fans. Make Arya more badass. Maybe. And perhaps also if they decided they wanted Jon to kill Daenerys for, like, tragic romance reasons, it would be a bit of a disappointment to have Jon also kill the Night King as well, so you can, like, pass the Night King over to another Stark relative who is a main character that can fight well. That's also possible in their thinking. The two problems are these. One, she barely uses her training at all to kill the Night King. There's no great cunning or stealth or skill in it. She just drops down and stabs him, so it doesn't really feel like a satisfactory conclusion to all of this training. And two, if they did plan this all those years in advance and had been slowly trying to make Arya skilled enough to kill the Night King, giving her the dagger, dropping little hints, why the hell didn't they work in actual character motivations for Arya to kill the Night King? Like, that's the main problem. What does killing him actually mean to her? How does that either change her character or feel like a conclusion to her arc? It doesn't. It's just kind of a thing she does before then carrying on with her struggle around themes of revenge. If they made her story all about revenge, what does the Night King have to do with that? So that's the bit that really confuses me. What character reasons are there for Arya to do this, killing the big villain of the show? Like, I tried to ask all of you in a community post, and you came up with lots of practical reasons for why they might have decided it should be Arya, but there's no character reasons I don't think any of you gave at all. No reason it fits with her motivations, or her psychology, or as a resolution to her internal conflicts. It still kind of stumps me why this is supposed to matter to her. But, I don't know, David and Dad are intelligent people. I know a lot of people rip on them and call them Dumb and Dumber, which I've always been slightly uncomfortable with personally, but they're still people with brains. The early seasons attest to that. Surely they wouldn't just make one of the main characters do such a massive thing in the story without any personal motive for it. Maybe there is a really good one and I'm just not noticing it. If there is, please let me know in the comments. But I had a think and I reckon it's this. I reckon it's both of them getting stuck in a trope that they seem to enjoy based on basically doing the same thing with Jaime and the Hound. It's the idea of having some sort of vice that's always held them back, set against finally getting some of the happiness and peace that they've always needed, and that being a brief happiness before tragically succumbing to the vice again. What they need set against the desire to go back to what they want, even though it's bad for them, sort of. For Arya and Sandor, that vice is killing Cersei and Gregor for revenge. For Jaime, it's saving/dying with Cersei for love. I suppose you can call it love. The brief happiness for Jaime is the chance of a life with Brienne. For Arya, it's being the hero of Winterfell and also possibly happiness with Gendry. But I think getting to kill for reasons much bigger than just revenge, definitely. And for the Hound, it's this purpose with the Lord of Light and all of that stuff the show wrote in for him. It's all a brief happiness and high point in their arcs before they all tragically head south to King's Landing, all of them set to die until Arya turns away at the last moment. I think that was the intention. Make her killing of the Night King represent everything she could be if she just turned away from her quest for revenge. I think doing that 3 times with those 3 characters is repetitive. I don't think the tragedy really means that much in any of those situations. It feels a little more like sentimentality to me than anything else. Maybe Sandor's works. But either way, I think planning such a big moment for her final season arc so many years in advance as this, and not really building in any greater motivations for it. I suppose this is the biggest flaw with her character, not just how unsatisfying the moment feels, but how disconnected all of her development on her journey towards this moment is. Perhaps if there had been more layers to Arya, if she had been about more than just revenge, then it might have felt more connected. I don't know. I've talked a lot, and I feel like I haven't quite reached at the final point. Like, I'm still trying to grasp at whatever this is. And there is more I planned to say, but I think some of the points there would be a little pedantic, and I don't just like on 2 writers for the hell of it. I like to try and draw out something meaningful. Yeah, let me know what you think of this. Let me know what I got wrong, what I explained badly, missed, forgot to say. Like this video if you liked it. Subscribe. Maybe even support me on Patreon, but otherwise, hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Luke Core, Treat Caber, Michael Gallagher, Flying Spider, Kellyanne Davidson, Billy Lee Myers Jr., Samara Salsey, Joshua C. Follier, Chad Bramwell and Michael Hart. Thank you.